being here with us tonight, Professor Roger, and take it away.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you all for attending this session today. Unfortunately, I do not speak Portuguese, so I'll be speaking in English, but I will try to communicate as best as I can. If you do have any questions for us, you can put the questions in the chat, and I will try to get to questions throughout the course of this presentation. Today, we're going to be talking about auditioning, whether you're a performer or you're a director or a producer or a writer. Any project that you're working on, the audition process and the casting process is a very important component, and that's what I'm going to focus on today. In the interest of doing that, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, so bear with me. I'll try not to make that part of it too long. So I am the director of outreach at the New York Film Academy. I've been at the New York Film Academy for almost 12 years. This November will be 12 years that I'm with the university. Part of my job is to work with performing artists and visual artists from the United States and also from all over the world. I conduct the majority of auditions for our performing arts programs here at the New York Film Academy. I also work very closely with our filmmaking students. I do many, many different things at the institution. And one of the things I do is teach classes on auditioning, on the business of acting, on monologues, on basically the whole process of how you get yourself seen as an actor to be considered for professional jobs. I love working at New York Film Academy. I don't know how much you know about New York Film Academy, but just in the interest of giving you a brief overview, we're a college of visual and performing arts with 5 locations throughout the world. We focus on performing arts, such as acting for film and musical theater, as well as visual arts, everything from filmmaking to video game design to 3D animation to still photography. We do many, many different programs, and I help students to be able to attend school with us. Part of that takes me around the world doing guest lectures, information sessions, teaching, and I've been to Brazil many times. As a matter of fact, my last trip before the pandemic was supposed to be to Brazil, and that would have been my 21st trip to Brazil. So I'm very versed in working with Brazilian students. I know many, many Brazilians who've come and studied at the New York Film Academy, many of whom are still very, very close friends of mine. So I do love Brazil. I love everything about Brazil. I love working with performers as well as artists from Brazil. So it is very nice to meet you all. Now, prior to working at the New York Film Academy, my job was casting director. I was a professional casting director in New York for almost 12 years. In that period of time, I worked on hundreds of television commercials, probably close to 1,000 television commercials that I helped to cast. I also helped to cast video games, voiceovers, films, plays, television, industrials, basically anything that you can put a performer into a project. I've really assisted with that part of the process. I worked for a variety of different advertising agencies, production companies here in the United States. And in that period of time, I probably auditioned tens of thousands of actors, quite literally. So in that time, I learned a lot about the audition process, about the casting process, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and I will take you through a little presentation. And then if you do have any questions for me, I would hope you'd put those in the chat, and I will try and answer those questions for you. Okay, so we're going to initially talk about auditioning, and to do that, I just want to talk a little bit about what a casting director does. So when I was working full-time as a casting director, the way that that process would work is I would get hired by either an advertising agency or a production company, and I would work in close collaboration with that company to try to cast their project. Alexander, did you need me? Do you have a question?
Just that we have our first question here from Makala.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that. Do you want to address that, or do you want me to address it?
Well, whatever is best for you, if you want to address it at the end or right now.
Sure. Yeah, I'll see the questions coming in, and I probably will get to them as we go through this, specifically if they're New York Film Academy. I'm going to stick initially to the topic, which is just about auditioning. But Ana Clara, I promise you I will get to your question, because I will leave some time at the end to kind of review questions as well.
Okay, sorry for interrupting.
No worries. Thank you. Okay, so like I was saying, like a casting director, what I would do is I would be hired by an advertising agency or a production company, and they would hire me to cast their project. And basically what I would do is work with the director, work with the writer to determine exactly what they were looking for in terms of the talent that they wanted to use in their project. And then I would search for many people that fit into the categories that they're looking for. And then I would provide those, I would audition those actors, and then I would provide that material to my client who hired me to start to make selections on who we would use. And basically the way that that would work is that, and I'm going to give you a real world example. When Apple first launched the iPhone, okay, I worked on the first advertising campaign for the iPhone. And the first television commercial that they were making for the iPhone was to feature an actor kind of walking through the city streets, listening to music on his phone, but also taking phone calls, also saying hello to people on the street. And they were building a commercial around that premise. So I got hired by the director. In this situation, it was actually a married couple, a husband and wife, who direct many, many commercials. Dayton Ferris. They also directed many movies, including Little Miss Sunshine. Very established directors here in the US, and they were casting the first, they were making the first commercials for the iPhone. So they hired me. And basically what they said to me in our conversations were, we are looking for the smartest, funniest, most attractive, interesting, could be a man, could be a woman, we're not sure yet. We want them to be 18 to 22 years old. We want them to be good at moving, because when they're listening to the music, they are almost going to be dancing a little bit in the context of the commercial. And we want you to find that person. So if you think about that, 18 to 24 years old, men and women who move well, that's a very wide net. That in New York City, that would be so many different actors would fit into that category. But my clients don't want to see every single actor. They only want to see the absolute best performers in that category. So that's why you would hire a professional, a casting director, who is used to working with the talent, who is used to working with talent agents and managers, and who knows where to look for not all of the actors, but the best possible actors for that role. And then the casting director brings the people in, they audition the actors, they take those auditions, they send them to the many different clients who are actually going to choose who is going to be in that television commercial. And we start to take this big group of people and whittle it down to a much smaller group of very, very talented people. So basically like providing a funnel so that at the bottom of the funnel, we're only looking at the best actors in any category, because my clients don't have the time to see everyone. And that's why they hire a casting director, because we have expertise in finding the best possible actors who are working and then presenting those people to our clients. Now, some actors think that the casting director is the one who chooses who will actually be in the project. And generally, that's not what a casting director does. The casting director just tries to provide the best choices. And then the client will eventually pick who they think will be best in the given project. So for the iPhone commercial, I brought in men, I brought in women, all different ethnicities. So some white, black, brown, yellow, every color. I brought in people who were professional dancers because they wanted people who can move well. I brought in some people who are actors, not dancers, but who had maybe some physical ability listed as a special skill. And we auditioned all of these different people. And for that first round of iPhone commercials, we probably auditioned close to 1,000 performers. And we finally settled on one performer who did the best job through all of the auditions that we conducted to find the best person for that project. So we took thousands of actors, whittled it down to finally finding one person at the end of the process who we gave the role to. And that person received the role because he went through a series of auditions, and through those auditions was able to show us, myself, the casting director, the directors, the advertising agency, the production company, everyone, that this person would be the best person to be considered for this very, very specific role. And that's basically what a casting director does. So primarily, I am conducting auditions. I'm trying to find the best possible people. I'm staying very aware of who is working, who is working at a very, very high level. I'm always looking for new people, and that's what I focus on. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about auditioning specifically, and I hope that I do have some performers out there who are interested in auditioning, because what I'm going to talk about specifically is the art of the audition. And what I mean by that is, how do I take the audition process, approach that as an art form, and learn how to do that as well as possible, so that when I get to the point where I have an opportunity to audition for professional work, I am able to do so in the best possible way. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you guys a little bit and just take you through a little bit of my presentation here. Bear with me one moment while I pull it up, okay? All right, we'll try this again. Bear with me 1 second. And we'll see if I can share my presentation. Okay, here we go. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be talking about the art of the audition, and I'm talking about for actors, but I'm also talking about for people on the other side of the screen. If any of you are interested in directing or writing or producing, because when you do that, auditioning actors is going to be part of your job, and you want to approach the audition in the best possible way so that you can use it to make your projects much more creative, much more collaborative with the artist. Now, the way that I get started in talking about this, I start with mistakes, because I think that there are very, very common mistakes that performers make that make them audition maybe less effectively. Okay, so I think that there are a few very, very common mistakes that the performer makes, and I want to take you through that. Okay, the first big mistake I think that performers make are that they're not prepared. It's a lack of preparation. And that can mean many, many different things. I think on one end, a lack of preparation means, you received a script, but maybe you didn't memorize that script. You didn't have enough time to look at that script. Maybe you showed up late to the audition. Maybe you weren't aware of what is expected of you at the audition. All of that shows me as a casting director that this performer maybe is not ready to do this at a very, very high level. But there's also a different type of lack of preparation. And that really is about Obviously, I work for a school, so I'm a little bit biased, but that is about not having the training, the craft, the preparation that comes from developing your skills as a performer. So when you go into the audition scenario, maybe you are not as prepared because you do not have that education, that training, that technique to call back on. And the reality is, when you are acting professionally, the big difference between people who do it in school or who do it at the professional level, when people are first starting out, they may not have to know that much about technically how to be an effective actor. Maybe they're very naturally talented, they're very funny, they're charismatic, they're engaging, and they're able to get far just because they have that natural talent. But when you're doing this professionally, what you have to understand is that everyone is talented. When you get up to a very high level as a performer and you're getting in front of different casting directors and you're having an opportunity to audition for very high level projects that are going to pay you potentially good money to do those projects, everyone is good. So just being naturally talented is not going to be enough. That's when you're going to need to be prepared. You are going to need to have very solid foundation to fall back on. No one wants to teach you how to be an actor. They expect you to go into the audition and you already know how to be an actor. So a lot of that comes through how you prepare. So what are some things that you can do to prepare for an audition or even a role if you're given a role? Well, the first thing is basically what I was mentioning there, which is honing your craft, training, getting enough technique so that when you're put into a situation where you have to audition for a project, you understand what is expected of you. You're able to approach it as a professional. You're not only reliant on natural talent to get you through the audition, but you have technique to fall back on. So you know how to approach it. So anytime you go into an audition, you have a methodology, you have a technique that you use. And I think that that's very important because often you will not have a lot of time. It may be very high pressure, the situation. You may be very anxious. You may have a lot of nerves about doing the performance. And when you have technique, you're able to worry less, be less nervous because you have a very strong foundation to fall back on. Now, the second thing there you'll see is prepare and then let go. And what I mean by that is when you have to audition, and whether you're given a script, whether you're told to prepare a monologue on your own, whether it's an interview, there's going to be a certain amount of preparation that you can do. But you will get to a point where you're so prepared that the next step beyond that level of preparation is being able to forget about the preparation and let go so that you allow yourself to be spontaneous, that you allow yourself to be living in the moment, to be very mindful of what is going on. And that comes from being prepared. If I have to go and let's say do a presentation at work or something like this, or for my superiors, it helps me to be so prepared so that when I'm in the actual meeting or I'm in the presentation, I don't have to think too much about my preparation. I did it so many times that I have it kind of in my memory, and then I don't have to be consciously thinking about it. And I have room to be a little bit more spontaneous, to improvise, and to maybe find new creative ideas in the moment. And that really comes from a lot of preparation. Now, the third element on my list there is to be physically present. Sometimes actors, they think very mentally about how they're approaching the script. And especially when they go into an audition, they're very nervous. So they're thinking about, what am I going to do? The choices that I'm going to make, how am I going to say this line? That they forget about using their whole body, about being physically prepared, and they don't think about how much an actor's physicality brings to a role. So what I try to teach my actors, especially my students at New York Film Academy, is you do the mental work, but you also have to do the physical work. So you're thinking about preparing your body, if you have to warm up, if you have to stretch, if you do some kind of exercise before you go into an audition, so that you're very physically present. Because as someone who auditions actors all the time, I get so much information about the performer from the way they carry themselves physically. So if you're nervous, I can feel that through your physicality. If you're anxious, I can feel that. If you're very confident, if I can feel that, or if you have a lack of confidence, all of that is communicated through your physicality before you even say a word as a performer. So you really have to think about that. And then I work with a lot of actors, because New York Film Academy specializes in film and TV. I work with a lot of actors who have maybe never had film experience. They've done theater before, they've done theater in a classroom, and then they have to audition for film. And when you do film, so much of your physicality has to be still, and has to be quiet, and has to be internal, because oftentimes you're going to have a camera that's very, very close to you, and you're going to be in a very tight close-up, and anything that you say is going to be exaggerated. So actors have to physically go a little bit more internal, be quiet, be calm. And that's a difficult thing to get to. And again, that comes through a lot of physical training, technique work, so that when you go into the audition, you can be what I've listed there as relaxed, because you want to be as relaxed as possible. That's generally when people are at their most effective, but you want to be very hyper-focused as well. And I think that comes from being very prepared, both mentally and physically, okay? And then the last thing, what you'll see there is the 5 W's. Obviously, this will translate a little bit different in Portuguese, but the 5 W's are basically, I think, what every actor has to go to as like the root of all of your performances. And we call it like the imaginary circumstances that an actor creates so that they can be natural within a very imaginary circumstance. But basically, the way that you can get that set for yourself are thinking about who, what, where, when, why. Those are the most concrete questions that you can ask yourself as a performer. So if you were given a script and you have to go into an audition, those are questions that you should be asking yourself. So you receive the script. Who am I talking to? Right? That'll be the first thing that you want to know, because it makes a difference to the actor. If you were given a script and I said you were saying this to your mother, or I gave you the same script and I said you're saying this to your girlfriend, you would be different in both of those situations, even though the words are exactly the same. So you have to know exactly who you're talking to. Otherwise, you cannot be specific as a performer. So that's the who. What is a very important question. What am I talking about in this scene? What is it about? So that you know kind of the story that this scene is trying to tell. What are you trying to communicate within this scene? The third question is when? When is this happening? Is it at midnight? Is it at 9 a.m.? Because again, even if the words were the same, but if you were in a different time, you may be saying it differently. So you want to think about that. Also, the fourth W, where? Where is this taking place? Is this in your home? Is this in a restaurant? Is this at school? Is this in a stadium? Because again, those are all decisions that would affect how you would perform. And then the final question, the most important question that you should ask yourself as an actor is why? Why is this happening right now? because you have to know why you're saying the lines that you're saying, or why you're moving to the spot that you're moving to. You should have an answer for that. So you have to think about what happened right before the scene that you're in to let you know how to play that scene, right? Because context, what happened before, affects what's happening now. And if you don't know what happened before or why, then you can't honestly react, respond, and be natural as a performer. So I see a few people have turned on their camera. Let me ask you, does anyone have any questions about that part of it?
No.
Deborah, did you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to know if like you said that you can notice if the person looks nervous or if the person looks relaxed. Do you think that that makes like a huge influence on your final decision about?
I think it does. I think it does. I think if someone has a lot of self-doubt, if someone is very anxious, if someone is very nervous when they come into the situation, and those doubts or nerves or anxiety takes over and becomes more prominent than kind of what you're supposed to be doing as a character, what that says to me is you don't have enough technique or ability to be able to perform even though you're nervous, right? So if you think about it like this, you are always going to be nervous if you go into an audition scenario. Most people would be. Or if you were even a professional athlete and you had to play a sport at a very high level, you may be nervous, you may be anxious, right? But the people who excel in those areas are the people who can perform at a very high level, even though they're nervous, even though they're anxious. And that comes from training, repetition, practice, confidence, technique. And if you are not able to suppress the nerves to the point where that's what I see, that's what I'm perceiving, then I may look for an actor who actually has the technique and ability to not let us see that they're nervous or anxious or scared, because they have this very strong technique to fall back on. So I do think that it affects you in the audition scenario. If you're not able to allow us to see beyond your nerves or your anxiety in the situation. Now, sometimes someone may be nervous and that may come through, but there's also an incredible talent that's coming through, or creativity, where you may say, okay, this person is nervous right now, but if we rehearse with them and we work with them and we give them time, I think that they can get to the place where they can do this very effectively. Sometimes that can happen, but most of the time you don't have time to work with the person. That's what I mean when I say they have to know how to do it. You're not going to, when you're doing this at a professional level, no one's going to teach you how to do it. They're going to assume that you already know how to do it. So it depends on how much time, whether or not you would work with someone who maybe does an audition very well.
Thanks.
Sure. Does anyone else have a question in regards to that?
Do you have any tips to like go confident and relaxed and don't look like anxious and nervous for the audition?
I do, and I want to take you through some of those now and talk to you a little bit about trying to alleviate some of those things. So in my opinion, there are two major mistakes that actors make that would make them lose confidence and that would make them be very anxious. And I think that there are ways to get beyond that. The first mistake is that the actor is worried too much about getting the part. They're worried about what is going to happen after the audition. Will I get the role or not? rather than worrying about what's happening in the audition, which is just to give the best performance possible without worrying about what's going to happen after. But the problem is, most of the time, if you are an actor, most of the time, you're not going to get the part. Most of the time you will fail. Think about it. If I audition 30 actors for one part, 29 of them won't get it. I don't care how good they are. There's only one role. So if you're worried about it, and then you're probably not going to get it anyway, it creates a lot of anxiety and nerves that don't have to be there. Because trust me when I tell you, so many times when you don't get the part, it doesn't have anything to do with you. There's nothing you could have done one way or the other to get the part. So you're worrying about things that you actually have very little control over. And that's making you nervous and anxious. So once you stop worrying about getting the part and you start to worry about, how do I make this performance as complete as possible? How do I show myself in the best possible way in this audition without worrying about what's going to happen at the end, only focusing on what's happening in the audition? That's a way to kind of train your mind to be less anxious. You can't be thinking about two things at once as an actor, I believe. I don't think you can be worried about what's going to happen to me, the performer, after I do this audition, whether or not I'm going to get the role or not. That takes a lot of mind space to think about that. So I don't think that you can be thinking about that and then also be thinking about, who is my character? Who is he talking to? What time of day is it? Where am I? What do I want out of this scene? I think both of those things are in conflict. And you should be focusing on what's happening in the scene and not worrying about what's going to happen after. The other thing I would say in regards to that is, when you audition for me as a casting director, you think you're auditioning for one part. But to me, you're auditioning for every part that I'm going to cast from that point forward. So if you're not right for the first thing, and you're not right for the fifth thing, or the 10th thing, you might be right for the 11th thing, right? So you can't worry about what's going to happen at the end of this audition, because many times, and I tell this to actors all the time, many times I will work with a director and they'll say, you know, that actor that we auditioned last year for that one role and she didn't get the role. I really like that actress. I want you to bring her back in for this part, right? So you have to think about it. I'm not only auditioning for one role, I'm auditioning for everything that this casting director is going to do. And I want them to think of me when they're thinking about casting roles, even if they don't put me in this role now, right? So that's also like a mindset. The second really important mistake that I think actors make is that they give me too much credit. They think that I know exactly how the scene should go, or they think that the director knows exactly how the scene should go. And they think that we have a very clear idea. So they're trying to guess, like, what do they want me to do in this scene, right? But the truth is, most of the time, we don't know what we want. We may be thinking that we want a certain thing or not, but a very effective performer is not going to wait and think about what I want them to do. They are going to take the initiative and show me how they want to do it, right? So it's taking the power. The actor takes the power in their own hands. They don't worry about what I want. They worry about what they want. And they try to show me the best way to do the part. So that's a big distinction. And sometimes that's very scary, especially to a young performer who doesn't have a lot of power, maybe doesn't have a lot of experience. They're very worried about doing the wrong thing. But the reality is, trust me when I tell you, we don't know what we want. The right actor shows us that we want them to do it by what they do, not about what we think they should do. right? And let me share again for a second, because I want to talk to you about one very specific comment. So this is something I call the "I'm not worthy" syndrome, okay? An actor gets an audition, they come into the room, they feel so lucky that they even have the audition, because it's so hard to even get an audition. So they feel so lucky that they're they defer to us. Like, it's almost like the casting director is up here and the actor's down here, and I'm trying to impress this person. I'm trying to get them to validate me as a performer. And it's completely the wrong way to think about it. When you audition for me, we have the exact same goal, believe it or not. You want, or should want, to do the best performance you possibly can do in that audition. I want, as the casting director, I want you to do the best performance that you possibly can do. So we have the same idea about how this should go. And we are equals, and we are working together to help you to have the best performance in the room, and to help you to feel like you deserve to be there, that you're confident, that you have, if I called you in, if I gave you an audition, you should feel that you're worthy to do it. I'm not going to waste my time to audition a performer if I don't think there's something valuable there. So if you get the opportunity to audition, you have to feel like you're worthy to do it, and that your ability is enough. And part of that is just confidence, and part of that is not worrying so much about what I want or impressing me, right? And I know that's a tricky thing, because actors are always like, please choose me, choose me, choose me. I want you to choose me. But you have to get out of that mindset and get into the mindset of, I'm the actor, I'm an artist, I'm going to make choices, I'm going to do this how I want to do it. They may like me, they may not, but I'm still going to be true and honest to how I think this should go. Because at the end of the day, that is going to be what people like about you, is that you make clear decisions, and you trust yourself, and you trust your abilities, and you feel like you deserve to be in the room. Okay. The second thing I would say is, and this is something, it's related to what I was talking about with not worrying about what I want you to do. Actors, they have so much worry about what is expected of them when they come in the room, and they continuously try to guess, like, what do they expect me to do? And I just think it's not the right question you should be asking, because again, I think it takes you away from what you should be focused on. Is, like I said, who is this character talking to? Where am I? What time is it? Why am I doing this? Because that is actually going to affect your performance. Worrying about what's expected of you is not going to affect your performance. It's only going to affect you personally, and probably have actually a negative effect on your performance. And then, this is kind of what I was talking about when I'm talking about worrying about getting the part. And this is, again, a big mistake that I think actors make. They prioritize the end result rather than the process. Worried about getting it, not about what do I do to get it. I'm only worried about getting it. And I believe that for an artist, the most important thing is process, and developing a process for you that works for you, that is going to help you when you go into an audition scenario. So I know a lot of what I'm saying is like, trust yourself, be confident. But that is true. There's a lot. The reason I'm saying that is that there's a lot of truth to that, in that you do have to trust yourself. You have to trust your personality as a performer as well. Your personality, the way that you look at the world, your own perspective, that is the most valuable tool that you have as a performer. Because there may be a better actor than you, there may be someone who is better looking than you, or is taller, or has better abs, or more money, or they studied at a very prestigious school, but no one has your perspective. Only you have your perspective. So that is actually the most unique tool that you have as a performer, is the way that you look at the world and the way that you approach the world. And when I'm casting an actor, that's what I want to see. I want to see, how does this person approach the world? And can I see that through their performance, right? Like, it boils down to something very, very simple that all the acting training in the world really kind of comes down to in a certain way. If it was you in the situation, the play or the film or the television show, if it was you and you had to say those lines in your real life, given the actual situation that's happening, the who, what, where, when, why, how would you do it? That's what I want to see in an audition, how you would do it, as opposed to you, as opposed to you, as opposed to you. And it should always come from your unique perspective. Do you know, I'll give you a little story, and then I want to take some questions if you have questions, and answer some questions about Film Academy as well. But this may be a little old for you guys, but have you ever heard of the movie The Notebook? There's a movie, The Notebook. It stars Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams. And Rachel McAdams, before she made that movie, she had a few movies. She did Mean Girls. She was like an up and coming performer. Ryan Gosling was already cast in the movie. He was slated to play the main person, right? So then they were doing auditions to find his love interest, and they got down to the final callbacks. It was only a few people, and Rachel McAdams was one of the actresses, and there were two other actresses. And I heard Ryan Gosling and the director talking about this, and you can actually search it on YouTube if you ever want to hear this story from them. But Ryan Gosling basically said, the other actors who came in for the female role, they would ask him questions like, what do you think about the character? And do you have any advice for me? And how do you think I should do it? Or asking the director, like, do you have any ideas, any notes? Like, how should I do this? And they would always answer those questions. And then they said Rachel McAdams came in to the audition, her callback, and they were like, do you want to talk about it? Do you have any questions? And she said, no, I don't want to talk about anything. Let's just do it. And they were like, do you have any questions? Do you want to know anything? She's like, no, I read the script. Like, I know what's happening here. I have my own thoughts on it. I've experienced very similar things to this character. Don't tell me anything, just watch how I do it, right? And that sounds arrogant maybe, or like too confident, but it's actually perfect, because she knew how she would do it. And she knew that her instincts were going to be what got her the role, not necessarily what they told her about the role. It's her showing them her understanding of how to do it that was going to get it for her. So that's a very positive, I think, mindset to go in to an audition. Let me show them, me, the casting director, the writer, the director, whoever is auditioning you, let me show them how I would do this, right? And then if you're a director, if you make film or you make television, the advice that I would give to you when you do casting is, don't be too fixed in the casting that you're not open to the ideas that the actor is going to bring. Because a good actor would not only take your idea and do it, they'll enhance it, they'll add to it, they'll make it so much better, so much more rich. So when you do audition actors, you have to be open to the process and understand that you want to provide an opportunity for the performer to be as creative as possible within that audition, because a good performer is going to show you things that you never even thought about, that you didn't even think of. And you're going to watch it and say, oh, that was better than my idea. That's why I want to hire this actor, because they have great ideas and they bring interesting things to this that I didn't even think about. So you want to be open if you're the creator as well on the other side. Does that make sense? Or not, maybe? You know, when you're auditioning for New York Film Academy, it's a little bit different because when I audition actors for the school, they're not auditioning for one role. They're auditioning to be a student, and they're auditioning for potential scholarship. So I'm looking for some different things than when I'm trying to put an actor in a professional job. When I look at students, I want to see potential, not necessarily that they're completely fully realized as a performer, but they have the potential that if you train them and work with them, they will get to a point where they can do this at a very high level. When I'm auditioning actors in the professional world, they already have to be at the high level. There is no like, maybe if they train for 2 years, we can give them the part. No, it's like, can they do it today? And if they can't do it today, I'm going to cast another actor who can do it today. So it's a little bit different whether you're doing like a professional audition or auditioning for a school or anything like that. I do want to take some questions. I have a little bit of limited time, but my colleague Lizzie is here as well, who can answer questions if I have to jump off, which I'll have to do in 8 minutes. But first, let me answer Ana Clara's question about the New York Film Academy. Does the New York Film Academy have scholarships? We absolutely do. For students studying in long-term programs with us, and that would be in programs of 1 year or longer at New York Film Academy, we do talent-based scholarships. We also do need-based tuition assistance. For specific programs that are academic in nature, we do merit-based scholarship. So if you're looking to do a program with us, you would apply, you would submit your materials to be accepted into the program, and then we would evaluate that for potential scholarship. Now, we do not provide any full scholarships at New York Film Academy, but we do considerable scholarship for qualified students. So if you're interested in learning more about that, obviously get in touch with the agency. They can get in contact with us. We work very closely in collaboration to try and help students to be able to come to school. I have a question from Rafaela. What do you pay attention to the most in an actor when they're auditioning? The whole thing, basically everything that they're doing. But what I really pay attention to is what kind of choices is the actor making? And does that actor have a very clear point of view, a clear perspective? Can I tell from how they approach the material, how they look at the world? That's what I want to see. So your uniqueness, your individuality, your creativity. I want to know everything that's interesting about you through that audition. I like actors who can establish who are very quick to be comfortable. Although that's not every actor. Sometimes there are actors that take a long time to get there, but when they get there, then they can perform very well. Unfortunately, in an audition, you don't have a lot of time. So I like actors that are very comfortable and open and easy to work with, professional, they show up on time, and then they have a very clear perspective. Eureka has a question. How do you think TV, movie, and theater auditions differ? That's a big question. They're very different. For a lot of different reasons. One, like TV acting and theatrical acting are very, very different. Now, there are a lot of actors who can do both, but they are different, and you do have to approach them differently. Whenever you're doing film and television, there's an intimacy that theater, it's a little bit different. In theater, generally, I like to see that the actor, first of all, can kind of memorize big blocks of material, because that's what you're going to have to do if you do a play. I want to see that they can kind of express their theatricality, their physicality. I'm not watching them on a monitor. I'm generally watching them live when I do a theatrical audition, because if they're going to be doing a play, I'm going to have to see them live. So I love for them to be there in the room. When I'm doing TV and film, I'm going to use a camera. I'm going to use a monitor. I don't really watch the actor physically. I watch how they come across on the camera. So a lot of it is adjusting your performance for the camera. Also in film acting, you do a lot of stopping and starting, whereas in theater, they're very long chunks. So the audition process may be different. I mean, there are so many differences between TV and film now and theater. Now, good acting is good acting, and many great actors can transition between theater, between TV and film and back to theater, but you do have to make adjustments. They are different skills. And, you know, you can see a lot of that in how someone auditions. You know, if when the camera's on them, they have a tendency to kind of like go inside, pull you in, they're open. Whereas like on a stage, I kind of have to see how you can kind of take the stage and make me look at you and kind of force my focus to you. So a lot of differences between those two things. Come to New York Film Academy, study, we'll teach you all about that. Eric asked a question, do you pay attention if the person's physical features match with the characters? Well, keep in mind, I don't know who the character is going to be yet. So yes, there is a certain type and there's going to be certain people that you're looking for certain people to play certain roles. But at the same time, I try to keep myself open because again, I may have an idea for a role and then someone may come in and show me a better way to do it. And it may not be what I was thinking. And I want to be open enough to follow not what I was thinking, not my own ego, but the best person for the role. Now, don't get me wrong. Acting is very physical. There's a lot about, you know, it's a visual medium as well. We see you. So of course, your physicality, what you look like, your type, all of those things are going to make a difference. But I do try to be open physically so that I can maybe be surprised in the audition. And I also like to non-traditionally cast. So if something is supposed to be one thing, I kind of like to go in an opposite direction with it, because I think you can sometimes get something interesting there. So it really depends on what you're doing. You know, if I was casting a Marvel, if I was casting Thor, there's going to be a certain physicality that Thor has to have that not everyone is going to have. So there are certain roles where the physicality is going to be very defined, but if it's open, I try to be open as well. Okay, so Anaklava has a question. How can I get an audition for a series movie, even if I'm not a professional? It's difficult. I mean, like to get to that point, you really have to kind of go through it. Oftentimes, you're not going to be able to audition for a television show or a series until you have an agent or a manager, because we don't do open auditions. We work with agents. So the easy answer, Anaklava, is to work at it, is to train, is to audition for as many things as you can, is to work as much as possible. And if you work as an actor and you put in good work and you're strong, I do believe that kind of your opportunities will open up. Work begets work. But there's no easy way to say this is how you would go about becoming a professional actor. Now, here in the US, there are ways to audition for work prior to where you would get to the level where you're auditioning for very high level work. And that's how you would go about like getting an agent, getting a manager, auditioning for small jobs first, having people see you, networking, establishing a reputation. So it's really a process to get to that point where you're going to be auditioning for really high quality projects that pay a lot of money, and you have to kind of pay your dues and work through that. I can answer one more question here, and I will answer this question from Alessandro. Alessandro asks, would you say that if an actor gets too well into character, they can also change as a person? There's a positive and a negative to that. The positive is I hope you're always changing a little bit with every single role that you play, because as an actor, the amazing thing about being an actor is you express your emotion, right? But you're also like learning about yourself. You're putting yourself in new environments. You're having experiences that maybe you didn't have normally in your day-to-day life. So some of it is about like learning from the experience. Maybe there can be a negative aspect too, where they get so into the character that it really affects them. But I think that sometimes that's a little bit romanticized and not like the actual reality of being an actor. It's not like Joaquin Phoenix walks away from the Joker and now he's the Joker. How am I going to ever get out of this? He's a professional actor. He was doing a job. He did that job. Generally, when that job's over, you can't wait to get rid of the character. You're done with it. You put in so much time, so much effort. You want to go away, move on to the next job. And that's my experience with most actors. So we may romanticize it like, oh my God, it affected them and made them so crazy. But the reality is like, this is what they do professionally for a living. And they're able to kind of step in and out of it. Now, some of that will depend on what kind of actor you are. Are you like Christian Bale, where you disappear into the character? Or are you like Brad Pitt, who I don't think he disappears. I think it's like he's able to really use who he is to affect the character and to define the character. So some of it depends on the kind of actor that you are, you know? Okay, guys, I have to go. I have another appointment, but my colleague Lizzie is here as well. Lizzie, I do think that there's a couple of New York Film Academy specific questions. If anyone does have Film Academy questions, you can direct them to Lizzie. I hope that little workshop was helpful in general. You know, it's pretty short, but hopefully you got some tips and insight from that. I'm going to leave you in Lizzie's hands, but I want to thank you guys for attending today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So thanks a lot. Thank you, Lizzie.
Yeah, thank you very much, Roger.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Alexander. I really appreciate it.
Day.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
So I will answer any questions about New York Film Academy. Roger is the professional actor. I'm just the person who works for New York Film Academy. So there was a question, what do you think it's important to know if someone is considering auditioning as a student for the New York Film Academy? So for the New York Film Academy, you have to audition for any program that's 1 year or longer. And what we are looking for when you audition for New York Film Academy is 2 monologues that are 60 to 90 seconds apiece, that are contrasting, so dramatic and comedic, as well as contemporary. So anything from like the 1950s to now. We do not want Shakespeare. No one talks like that anymore. So that's not what we're looking for. When you are auditioning for New York Film Academy, you are welcome to choose from a play, a TV show, or a movie, whatever you feel connects with you. And you can either record the audition and send it in, or we can do a live virtual audition, much like this. Hopefully soon we'll be back on the road in Brazil and holding live auditions when we are down there, but I don't know when that's going to happen again. But really the biggest thing that we look for in an audition from a student is what you can bring to the piece, not what has already been done with the piece. So Roger had mentioned Joaquin Phoenix in The Joker. That's Joaquin Phoenix's take on it. We want to see what you can do, not how Joaquin Phoenix played it. We want to see how you yourself can play it and how you bring the story to the character and not emulate what someone else has already done. Okay.
Hey, any more questions? No?
Okay,
Does
so
anyone want to open the camera to ask a question? Maybe?
well, if you do have questions, please direct them to the agency. Alexander can talk a little bit more about that. Again, hopefully we'll be back in Brazil in 2022. But everyone, until then, stay safe and stay healthy. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Lizzie.
Oh, Milka.
Oh, wait, somebody has a question. Rogério?
We're good to go.
Lindsay, can you hear me?
I can.
The university that you work on, what is the recommended GPA to get in?
That's a good question. New York Film Academy is, we actually don't have a minimum GPA and we do not require SAT or ACTs, mostly because we are an art school. So we're not really looking about how you did in history and algebra. That has no effect on how you will be an actor. What we will look for the most is your audition or your creative portfolio, depending on which program you're interested in. But there are no SATs or ACTs or a minimum GPA. You would just have to audition or show a creative portfolio. There are 2 letters of recommendation that are required, as well as a statement of purpose, and then an English language test if you're coming for a degree program.
Okay. Was
hi,
that the last
Thank you very much.
question?
You're welcome.
Sorry, I have a question. Rogério said a little about scholarships, but how exactly do they work for,
So the first step that we'll do after you have applied is we will review your work. Again, if you're coming for acting or musical theater, you'll submit an audition. If you're coming for any of our visual arts programs, you'll submit a creative portfolio. So we will then review that work for a potential talent-based award, which can be anywhere between about 1/3 to 1/2 off of your tuition. However, if you don't receive that full talent-based award, you can also apply for a needs-based tuition assistance, which is based off of you and your family's need for financial help. So you would fill out a short application. You have to write an essay describing what is going on in your family's finances. Are both parents working? Do you have other siblings who are studying abroad? Was there a massive global pandemic that just happened? So we just want to hear what's going on in your family's finances. But between the two, between talent-based and needs-based, the most that you can receive for New York Film Academy is $15,000 per year off of your tuition. So again, depending on which discipline you choose, that's between about 1/3 to 1/2 off of your tuition.
thank
I
you.
have a question.
Sure.
The live auditions you mentioned, are they after or before we send the monologues and the recommendation letters?
So the first step is to apply. You have to apply for us to be able to look at any of your work. But if you want to do a live audition, then you don't have to send the monologues. We will just record the work that you're doing. But you can do that before you send the letters and narrative statement and English language test and all of that.
And how can we get the live audition?
Well, you have to apply first, and you can apply through the agency. They'll be able to help you with that. And then once the application is in, we can set up a time that works both for you, myself, and Roger to go through the monologue. It'll just be the three of us talking much like this, and then you'll perform via Zoom, and we will record it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. One more question. How much experience do you have to apply for an audition? None. You don't necessarily have to have any. If you're coming for a one-year conservatory program, those are designed for people who may not have any experience in acting, but they know that this is something that they have a passion for. So you can always start with a 1 year. If you're looking to come for like a master's program, you do have to have a large background of acting in order to get into the master's program. But for our short-term workshops, those 4 and 8 week workshops, and then the 1 year conservatory programs, it's not absolutely necessary that you have a background in acting. That's why you're coming to us, is so that we can teach you how to act. It's different when you are looking to come for a master's program, which is a terminal degree in this industry.
Okay, well, I believe that's it. Any more questions?
Yes, actually, I got it's like a continuation to that question.
Okay.
Because you talked about a creative portfolio. How is that? How do I make a creative portfolio?
So that's a good question, and that's going to be dependent on which discipline you're interested in applying for. We are a film school. We're called the New York Film Academy. So if you have made any films, of course, we would want to see the films that you have made. If they're just fun films that you made with friends, or if they're just short 30-second shoots, we would want to see what you have done with your creativity in the time that you had. And if they are in Portuguese, they do need to have English subtitles. But if you haven't made a film, that's okay as well. So you can submit anything that really shows your creative side, the ideas you have, the stories you want to tell. So you could submit a script, a drawing, storyboards, short stories, poems. I had one student who was a furniture designer, and he submitted the photos of the furniture he designed. So it really can be anything that shows your creativity. but you can also go on our website to our requirements page, and you can see exactly what we would be looking for in each of our disciplines. And there's also some tips on the website as well, so that you can understand what our chairs are looking for. But it is very dependent on which program you're looking for, but really we just want to see your creativity and your art and your ideas.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
So last call. No one? Well, Lizzie, thank you so much for being with us here today. I think we're going to call it. And as you can tell, we're all very, very interested in the New York Film Academy.
I love it.
Thank you to all the students that were asking questions with their cameras open. It's always nice. And yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, everyone. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bom,
Thank you,
gente.
Lizzie.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Oh, I miss seeing people. So this is nice.
we all
bye,
do.
everybody.
Bye. Bom, gente, muito obrigado. Mais uma mock class. Essa foi bem legal, né? Primeira mock class na trilha de arte e criatividade. Se vocês quiserem saber de mais mock classes nessa trilha, lembra de se inscrever no Instagram. Lembra de fazer sempre a inscrição no Simpla para todas as mocks. Lembra também de seguir a gente no YouTube e no Telegram. Eu acho que só isso de anúncios por hoje. Para todos que fizeram parte do University Global Week, muito obrigado. Para todos que querem dar uma olhada, tá no nosso canal de YouTube também. E acho que é isso. Tenha uma boa noite aí. Ah, e aliás, todo mundo também no chat, se vocês já quiserem me desejar um feliz aniversário antecipado, vai ser amanhã.
Feliz aniversário.
Obrigado.
Feliz aniversário.
Obrigado a todos.
Só os bons ficaram até agora. Feliz aniversário pro
mais ou
Alex.
menos. É isso aí. Obrigado, Alessandro. Bom, boa noite, gente. Tchau, tchau.
Boa noite.